My beloved child, pause here for a moment, because what you are about to hear was not meant to pass by you unnoticed. Do not scroll away. There is a reason your heart became still when these words appeared before you. Something happened this afternoon, and although you may not yet know every detail, your spirit has already sensed that the atmosphere around your connection has changed. You may have felt a sudden heaviness without explanation, a strange memory rising from nowhere, or the unmistakable feeling that someone was thinking about you with an urgency they could no longer silence. That feeling was not meaningless. Your soulmate needs to explain what happened this afternoon, because one unexpected moment brought your name, your face, and everything they have tried to hide from themselves rushing back into their heart. Stay with this message until the end, because the most important part is not what happened around them. It is what happened within them. The afternoon began in an ordinary way. Nothing seemed unusual. The world around your soulmate continued as it always had, filled with familiar voices, unfinished responsibilities, passing distractions, and the quiet pressure to keep moving as though everything inside them was perfectly settled. They had become skilled at appearing calm. They had learned how to carry questions without answering them, how to smile when their heart felt uncertain, and how to push thoughts of you into the background whenever those thoughts became too powerful. But heaven knew that what had been buried was not gone. It was only waiting for the right moment to rise. That moment came sooner than they expected. It may have begun with a conversation they did not plan to have, a place they did not intend to visit, or a reminder they believed they were ready to face. Something small opened a door inside them. Perhaps someone mentioned a word you once used. Perhaps a familiar song began playing where they could not escape it. Perhaps they saw two people sharing the kind of understanding that cannot be forced, and suddenly they remembered the way your presence once made them feel seen. Whatever the outward detail was, it touched something hidden. Their attention shifted. Their breathing changed. For several seconds, the noise around them seemed to fade, and there you were again, not physically, but vividly enough that they could no longer pretend you had become a distant memory. Do not skip this part, because this is where the story becomes deeper than coincidence. Your soulmate did not merely remember you. They remembered a specific moment they had misunderstood. For a long time, they had repeated a certain version of the past to themselves. They told themselves that you had stopped caring, that the distance between you had grown because the connection was not meant to continue, or that your silence meant your heart had moved on. They used this explanation to protect themselves from a more difficult truth. Yet this afternoon, something challenged that entire story. A detail they had ignored suddenly became clear. A memory rearranged itself. What once looked like rejection began to look like protection. What once appeared to be indifference began to look like pain. And what they had called an ending began to feel like a moment neither of you had known how to handle. They stood there carrying that realization while the world moved around them. No one nearby understood what had just happened inside their heart. No one could see the invisible thread pulling their thoughts toward you. They may have gone quiet in the middle of a conversation. They may have looked down at their phone without knowing what they expected to see. They may have walked away for a few minutes because remaining composed suddenly required more strength than they possessed. They did not know how to explain the change, because the truth arrived too quickly. One moment they believed they had placed your connection safely behind them. The next moment, they were questioning whether they had walked away from something their soul had never truly released. And this is only the beginning of what happened this afternoon. My child, there are moments when heaven does not change the outer world immediately. Instead, heaven allows one truth to become impossible to ignore. That is what occurred. Your soulmate was confronted by the emotional consequence of everything left unsaid. Not as punishment, but as awakening. They began remembering the conversations that almost became confessions, the pauses that carried more meaning than spoken words, and the times they sensed you were waiting for honesty but received uncertainty instead. They remembered your patience. They remembered your restraint. They remembered how often you tried to understand what they could not explain. And for the first time in a long while, they did not view those memories through fear. They viewed them through clarity. Something huge is waiting for you in this message, because this clarity did not bring comfort at first. It brought regret. Your soulmate realized that they may have allowed fear to speak louder than love. They saw how often they had confused emotional control with emotional strength. They recognized that keeping distance had not protected them as much as they once believed. It had only delayed the conversation their heart was always going to demand. This afternoon, that delayed conversation began inside them. They asked themselves questions they had avoided for weeks, months, perhaps even longer. Why does your name still affect them? Why does the thought of you feel unfinished? Why do they compare moments of peace with the peace they once felt near you? Why, after all their attempts to move forward, does some part of them still turn around whenever life becomes quiet? They tried to dismiss the questions, but the questions remained. Then something even more unexpected occurred. Your soulmate encountered a sign that felt almost too precise to ignore. It may have been your initials appearing where they did not expect them, a phrase that sounded exactly like something you once said, a date connected to your story, or a sudden notification that brought your memory back with startling force. To anyone else, it might have appeared ordinary. To them, it felt personal. Their heart recognized the meaning before their mind could explain it. They stopped. They looked again. And in that instant, they felt the strange certainty that the past was not returning to disturb them. It was returning because something needed to be understood. Stay until the end, because the sign alone was not what unsettled them. It was what happened immediately after. A person near your soulmate said something about love, timing, or second chances. The words were not directed at them, yet they landed as though heaven had placed them in the exact path of their listening heart. Perhaps the person spoke about how people sometimes lose beautiful connections because they wait too long to become honest. Perhaps they mentioned that silence can create wounds that truth could have prevented. Perhaps they said that when someone continues to live in your heart after every distraction has faded, the feeling deserves to be examined rather than denied. Your soulmate did not respond much. They may have nodded, looked away, or changed the subject. But inwardly, the message struck a place they had kept guarded. That was when your name rose in them again. Not gently this time. Not as a distant thought. It came with emotion. They remembered the way you looked at them when you were trying to understand what they would not say. They remembered the warmth you offered without demanding immediate certainty. They remembered the moment you began protecting your own heart because waiting had become painful. And suddenly, your soulmate understood something that shook them deeply: you may not have left because you stopped loving them. You may have stepped back because loving them without clarity was slowly breaking your peace. That realization changed the entire afternoon. They could no longer place all the responsibility on circumstances, timing, or confusion. They saw their own choices more clearly. They remembered messages they almost sent but deleted. They remembered opportunities to speak but remained silent. They remembered the day they could have told you the truth but allowed pride, uncertainty, or outside influence to close their mouth. Those memories did not come to condemn them. They came to reveal the cost of avoidance. And now they need to explain what happened because they know you deserve more than vague signals and hidden feelings. You deserve the truth behind their silence. My beloved child, you have wondered whether your soulmate ever recognized how deeply this connection affected you. You have asked yourself whether they understood the nights you replayed conversations, the moments you questioned your own intuition, and the days you tried to release what your heart still felt. You may have believed they moved through life untouched while you carried all the emotional weight. But heaven has seen what remained hidden from you. Your soulmate was not untouched. They were overwhelmed. They did not know how to hold a connection that revealed so much of themselves. Your presence brought comfort, but it also brought truth. And truth frightened the parts of them that had survived by staying guarded. This afternoon, those defenses weakened. For a brief moment, they stopped running from the depth of the connection and allowed themselves to feel it completely. The result was powerful. Their chest tightened. Their eyes may have filled with tears they quickly concealed. Their hands may have trembled as they opened an old conversation, searched your name, or stared at a photograph they had told themselves no longer mattered. They may not have contacted you yet. Do not mistake hesitation for absence of feeling. Sometimes a person can reach the edge of honesty and still need one final moment of courage before stepping forward. Your soulmate reached that edge this afternoon. And there is something they discovered there. They discovered that the connection was not painful because it lacked meaning. It was painful because it carried more meaning than they were prepared to accept. They discovered that forgetting you had never truly been the goal. The goal had been avoiding the vulnerability that remembering you awakened. They discovered that every distraction had only softened the surface while leaving the deeper truth unchanged. And most of all, they discovered that what they feared losing may already have become the very thing they cannot stop longing to restore. Do not scroll away now, because another person may be connected to what happened. Someone around your soulmate may have noticed the sudden shift in their expression. This person may know more about you than you realize. Perhaps your soulmate has mentioned you indirectly, spoken about someone from the past, or described a connection without revealing your name. The person sensed that this story was not over. They asked a question your soulmate was not prepared to answer: why haven't you told them how you really feel? That question remained in the air. Your soulmate may have laughed nervously, avoided eye contact, or claimed that too much time had passed. But the person did not accept the excuse. They may have said, "Time does not erase what is real. It only reveals whether it was real enough to survive silence." Those words entered your soulmate's heart with unusual force. For the first time, they imagined what might happen if they stopped protecting themselves from every possible outcome. They imagined speaking honestly, not knowing how you would respond. They imagined hearing your voice again. They imagined explaining why they withdrew, why they hesitated, and why they allowed you to believe you did not matter when the truth was far more complicated. Then they imagined losing the opportunity forever. That was the moment urgency entered their heart. Until this afternoon, your soulmate believed there would always be more time. More time to understand their emotions. More time to become certain. More time to wait for the perfect moment. But something made them realize that life does not promise perfect timing. People heal. People change. Hearts learn to close doors that remained open too long. Your soulmates suddenly wondered whether you were already moving forward without them. They wondered whether someone else had begun offering you the clarity they failed to provide. They wondered whether the silence they once used for protection had now become the distance that could permanently separate you. The thought disturbed them more deeply than they expected. They looked at the afternoon light differently after that. Everything felt temporary. The conversations around them seemed less important. The responsibilities they had used as distractions no longer held the same power. Their heart kept returning to one question: what if I have waited too long? My child, this is why your energy may have felt unsettled. When two hearts have shared a profound emotional bond, moments of awakening can echo beyond physical distance. You may have suddenly thought of them. You may have felt compelled to check your phone. You may have remembered a scene you had not revisited for a long time. You may have experienced a wave of emotion that did not seem connected to your present moment. This does not mean you must chase, force, or abandon your peace. It means only that something unresolved moved closer to the surface. Heaven is not asking you to place your life on hold. Heaven is reminding you that what is meant to be revealed will not require you to lose yourself. Your soulmate's awakening is their responsibility. Their explanation must come through courage, not through your pursuit. You have already carried enough uncertainty. You have already given enough silent understanding. The next movement must contain honesty. And your soulmate knows this now. They know a simple message will not be enough. They cannot return with vague words, unfinished intentions, or temporary emotion. Something happened this afternoon that made them recognize the seriousness of what they might say next. They began forming an explanation in their mind. They considered where to begin. Should they tell you about the fear that made them withdraw? Should they admit how often they checked for signs of you? Should they reveal that they kept certain memories because letting them go felt impossible? Should they confess that they heard your voice in their mind during moments when they needed comfort? Each possible beginning felt incomplete. Because the truth is larger than one sentence. The truth is that your soulmate did not fully understand your importance until distance removed the comfort of your presence. When you were near, they assumed there would be more opportunities. When you were patient, they mistook your strength for endless endurance. When you gave them space, they believed you would always remain emotionally available. But your absence taught them what your presence had been quietly giving. You brought a kind of peace they could not manufacture. You saw beyond their performance. You noticed the emotions they disguised. You made them feel known, and being known was both beautiful and terrifying. This afternoon, they admitted that to themselves. They admitted they missed the way you understood what they could not express. They admitted they have compared others to you. They admitted that certain victories felt incomplete because you were not there to share them. They admitted that their heart still looks for you in unexpected places. And although they may not yet know how to repair the distance, they no longer want to pretend it means nothing. Something extraordinary is building beneath this explanation, but you must hear this carefully. The message is not telling you to surrender your boundaries. It is telling you to prepare your heart for truth without abandoning wisdom. Love is not proved by urgency alone. It is proved by consistency, accountability, and the courage to remain honest after the emotional moment has passed. Your soulmate may feel urgent now, but what they do next will reveal whether this afternoon became a temporary wave or a genuine turning point. Heaven has been working not only on their heart, but on yours. You are not the same person who once waited without answers. You have grown through the silence. You have learned that your value does not depend on another person's ability to recognize it. You have learned that being deeply loving does not require accepting confusion indefinitely. You have learned to hear your intuition without allowing longing to overrule discernment. That growth is important, because when the explanation comes, you must listen from strength rather than desperation. Your soulmate may expect to find the version of you who would accept any small sign. But they are approaching someone wiser now. Someone who has prayed through disappointment. Someone who has rebuilt peace slowly. Someone who knows that beautiful words must be followed by beautiful actions. This does not mean your heart has become cold. It means your love has become mature. And that maturity may surprise them. This afternoon, they opened a door inside themselves. But before they can reach you, they must walk through the truth waiting behind it. There are details they have not told anyone. There is a reason their behavior changed when the connection became serious. There is an influence that made them question what they already knew in their heart. There is a conversation from the past that shaped their fear of choosing love. And there is one decision they made concerning you that they now regret more than they have admitted. Stay until the final word, because this decision is connected to the exact event that happened today. Your soulmate may have received information about you this afternoon. It may have come through a mutual connection, a passing comment, a social update, or something they discovered unexpectedly. The information itself may not have been dramatic, but its meaning was. They learned that you have changed. They sensed you are no longer standing emotionally where they left you. They saw evidence of your growth, your peace, or your movement forward. And suddenly, they understood that while they had been postponing honesty, you had been learning how to live without it. That realization frightened them. Not because they want control over your life, but because they finally felt the consequence of their delay. They realized you are capable of choosing peace even if that peace does not include them. They realized your heart may still care while refusing to remain trapped in uncertainty. They realized that the door they assumed would always be waiting may now require more than a casual return. Their first response was silence. Their second response was regret. Their third response was a decision. They reached for their phone. They opened your name. They began typing. The first words came quickly, then stopped. They deleted them. They tried again. This time they wrote more. They attempted to explain that something had happened, that they needed to speak, that there were things you deserved to know. But fear returned. What if you did not respond? What if you had stopped believing them? What if their honesty arrived after your heart had already chosen another path? They stared at the unfinished message. Minutes passed. The afternoon continued slipping away. Then, just as they were about to close the screen, something appeared that made them freeze. It was connected to you, but not in the way they expected. It revealed that one of the assumptions they had carried about your silence may have been completely wrong. Suddenly, the explanation they had been preparing was no longer enough. They realized they were not the only one who had been holding back a truth. There was something you had tried to communicate long ago, something they had misunderstood, overlooked, or never fully received. And this afternoon, they finally discovered what it was. Their eyes moved over the words more than once. Their heart began pounding. The room around them seemed to disappear. Because hidden inside that discovery was the answer to the question that had followed them for so long. You had not stopped caring when they thought you did. You had been waiting for them to choose honesty. And what your soulmate saw next made them whisper your name aloud, because it revealed exactly how close they had come to losing the one connection their heart had never truly replaced.